ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaskar my dear friends, this is video number 19 on Panchadasi of Swami Vidyarnaya. This video starts with part 5 of chapter 12. Topic is the two ways. There are two roads which lead to the knowledge of the bliss nature of the self, the way of discrimination and the path of yoga. The fruit of both the methods is the same, namely the knowledge of the self. What is called discriminative knowledge is the intuitive experience of the inner self gained through an inquiry into the nature of the five seats. Yoga is said to be for the sake of the attainment of self-knowledge. That both these methods, Viveka and Yoga, are instrumental to knowledge is declared by the Lord in the Gita. The place which is reached by the Sankhya is reached by the yogi also. He who sees that the way of Sankhya and the way of yoga as one, he sees indeed the path of yoga may be difficult to some people and the way of discrimination may be difficult to others, and so these two paths are intended to show the difference that is found among the seekers of truth. It cannot be said that the path of yoga, because it is more difficult to follow, is superior to the way of discrimination. The alleged superiority of yoga cannot be due to its being the cause of intuitive knowledge, for even Viveka leads to the same result. It cannot be said that because yoga causes the removal of attachment and aversion, it is superior to discrimination, for the latter also destroys attachment and aversion to objects. The man of discretion who knows that the self alone is the locus of supreme love, how can he be attracted to external objects? And for him who has attained the balanced vision, how can there be the feeling of hatred or aversion? He is no whit inferior to the yogin, is being free from all flaws of the mind. Nor can the superiority of the yogin be sought to be maintained by pointing out that for him there is no apprehension of the world of duality, while the man of discrimination is not devoid of that apprehension. In the state of empirical uses, both the yogin and the vivekin apprehend the world, just as in the state of samadhi there is no cognition of duality for the yogin. Even so, for the man of discrimination, there is no presentation of duality when he is possessed of discriminative knowledge. Thus, both the methods Viveka and Yoga lead to the same goal, viz. Release through the channel of knowledge. Chapter number 13, Non-Dual Bliss, Advaita Ananda Prakarana. The chapter Advaitananda sets for the non-duality of Brahma, the indeterminability of Maya, and the illusory nature of world. Non-duality of Brahma, part 1 of chapter 13, Non-duality of Brahma. In the previous chapter, the notion of the self was said to be threefold: principal, secondary, and the illusory. The witness intelligence is the principal self, sun, etc., constitute the secondary self, and the body, etc., go to make up the illusory self. Now, if over and above the principal self, there are other selves, secondary and illusory, which belong to the same class as itself, and if there be also ether, etc., which do not belong to the same class as the self. It is possible to argue that the non-duality of the self is destroyed, but in reality, what are regarded as selves belonging to the same class as the principal self fall within the range of what constitutes the world, and the world as apart from the self which is bliss has no existence. Hence the non-duality of Brahma is in no way affected. The Taittiriya Upanishad declare that all things from ether to the physical body have their origin in the self. So from this Atma has suffering ether, etc. From Brahma, which is Atma, was born the Akasha, Akasa being that whose attribute is sound and which gives space for all things having form, and from Akasa the rest of the elements and elementals arise. The preeminent of all is the Purusha who, as identical with the seed of food, is but a product of matter. Thus, since Brahma is the cause of the entire world and the latter has no existence apart from Brahma, and hence it cannot destroy the non-duality thereof, it cannot be objected that since the above scriptural passages characterize only the self as the cause of the world, it is not established thereby that bliss is the primal cause and that it is not conditioned by duality. For the same Upanishad declares in another place that bliss is the source, sustenance, and solace of all that exists. From bliss, verily, these creatures are born. Having come into being by bliss, they live, and having departed into bliss again, they enter. Because the world is the product of Brahma, which is bliss is, it is evident that the former has no reality apart from its cause. Just as pot is not different from clay, the world is not different from the self. Brahma is not merely the efficient cause of the world as the potter is of pot, in which case the product cannot be identical with the cause. On the other hand, it is the material cause of the world as clay is of pot. For the self, the efficient cause alone, the scriptural passage declaring that in bliss the beings have their existence and unto it they return would have no meaning. Verily, pot is not dependent on the potter for its existence, and when destroyed, it does not get dissolved in the potter. In clay, which is its material cause, pot exists, and when destroyed unto clay, it returns. Similarly, since it is declared by scripture that Brahma bliss is the locus of the origination, sustenance, and destruction of the world, Brahma is the material cause and not merely the efficient cause of the world. Now, what kind of material cause is Brahma of the world? Does its material causality consist in origination as in the case of the primal atoms, or does it consist in transformation as in the case of primal nature, or is it characterized by being illusory manifested? The Vaisesikas and others who hold the view of absolute creation say that something originates from something else, and they attribute the creation of the world to the conjunction of primal atoms. The Sankhyas and those who are in sympathy with their view of transformation characterize the world as a transformation of primal nature as curd jar of milk. When a thing attains a state which is different from its present one, it is called transformation. When a thing, while not abandoning its prior state, appears to be of a different state, it is known as illusory manifestation. That change, which is of the same grade of reality as the thing, it's a transformation. What is of a different nature from that is illusory manifestation, or the effect, which is non-different from the cause, is a transformation. The effect, which even without being non-different from that cause is yet difficult to state apart from that, is an illusory manifestation. Such is the distinction between transformation and illusory manifestation. Brahma can be neither the originating cause nor the transformed cause. What is partless by nature cannot originate something de novo, nor can it get itself transformed into something else. Brahma illusorily manifests itself as the world, as a rope appears to be a snake. Illusory manifestation is possible, for that is partless on the sky, which is without parts, spherical shape and blue color are superimposed. Similarly, the world of names and forms is illusorily superimposed on the partless bliss. Part 2 of Chapter 12. Indeterminability of Maya. The power of Maya is the ground of superimposition, just as the magical power of the magician is the ground of his feats. Because of the admission of the power of Maya, there does not result duality for Brahma. Power does not exist apart from the possessor of power, nor is it non-different from the possessor. Heat, which is the power of fire, is not different from fire, nor is it identical with it. If it were not different from fire, then it must be found always therein. But we observe that fire does not burn when it is influenced by spells. It is no doubt true that we cannot directly perceive power, for power is always inferred from its products. In the case of fire, when it is under the influence of spells, we infer that there is no power because of the absence of sparks emitted therefrom. Hence, power cannot be identical with the possessor of power. That there is the power known as Maya in Burma is evident from the passage which reads, "They who follow the path of meditation beheld the power of the divine self hidden by its own gunas." The Upanishad states that sages who wanted to find out the cause of the world, rejecting the other cosmological views which attribute the causality of the world to time, Swabhava, etc., discovered that there is a power known as Maya located in the self, which is the ground of the projection of the world. The supreme power of this self is declared to be manifold, being volitional, emotional, and conditional in nature. The cognitive power of Maya has a preponderance of the tamas constituent. The cognitive power has a preponderance of the sattva constituent, while the power of emotion present in Maya having a preponderance of the rajas constituent serves to help the other two powers. Thus the Upanishad points out how there is the power of Maya in Brahma, which is the cause of projection of the world. In the Yoga Vasishtha, we have a description of the power that is located in Brahma. The Supreme Brahma is eternal, full, non-dual, and omnipotent. As waves are to the sea, so are the powers to Brahma, which are neither identical with nor different from it. By whatever power the self is pleased, that power gets manifested. Observe Rama, how the power of intelligence which belongs to Brahma is found in the various bodies. There is in the winds the capacity to move, in the rocks there is manifested the power of immobility. There is fluidity in water, and in fire the power to consume. In ether there is void, in perishable objects there is the power to get destroyed. Just as within the shell of an egg there is a great serpent, even so in the self the world exists. Everything is located in Brahma, as the tree with its roots and sprouts, leaves and branches, flowers and fruits exist potentially in the seed. As the earth produces its harvest according to the particular soil and season, so the powers that belong to Brahma manifest themselves differently in accordance with the difference in place and time. O Rama, when that omnipresent and ever luminous self, whose nature is greatness, assumes the power known as thinking, then it is called mind. All causality and instrumentality and their resultants, as well as the production, continuance, and destruction of all things, take place in Brahma itself, beside which there is no other cause whatsoever. The whole is a form of the Supreme Self, and all things are but forms of the same, and the mind is also a mode thereof, as a golden ornament is from but a form of gold. To illustrate that the power of Maya, which creates the world, is neither real nor unreal, that it is phantom creation like the magical feat of a magician, Vasishtha relates to Rama a fantastic story. The cosmological theories have the same kind of reality as is possessed by the fables that are related to young children. At first the mind, after that the cognition of bondage and release, then the creation of the universe, which goes by the name of the world. Thus and in other ways the world has attained an appearance of reality. But this is just like the fable which is told to handsome children in order to amuse them. The story is that of an old nurse who related to the boy who was under her care a fantastic fable. Vasishtha addressed Rama and said, Hear, hear me tell you the tale of a silly and dull-witted boy who once asked his nurse to recite to him some pretty story for his amusement. The nurse began to relate her fine wrought story for the pleasure of the boy with a gladsome countenance and in accents sweet as honey. There were once three handsome and healthy princes. Two of them were not born, and the other was not even in the womb of his mother. Virtuous by nature, they lived in a town which was absolutely non existent. Leaving their city of void, the three princes, who were endowed with undiluted minds, beheld on their way fruit bearing trees hanging in the sky, and then, after sporting in the forest, they lived happily in the land of the future. When this story was told by the nurse, the boy was very much amused and he believed all that the nurse had told him to be true. The story of world creation fares no better than the fable related by the nurse. As the princes, the sport, and the future city were mere creations of the nurse's imagination, so the existence of the visible world is but a production of the imaginative power of man. Through stories such as the above one, Vasishtha explained the nature of Maya. Maya, the power of Brahma, is different both from its products and its locus. The power of fire to burn is inferred, while the locus of the power with fire and its products, the sparks, are directly perceived. Hence, it is patent that power is different from the locus and from the products. The power that resides in clay is different from clay as well as from pot. It is neither the clay with the five attributes nor the pot with a definite shape. In it there are neither grossness, etc., which are the attributes of pot, nor soundness, etc., which constitute the attributes of clay. Hence, the nature of power is unthinkable, nor may it be said that unthinkableness is itself the nature of power. For power, which is neither different nor non-different from its locus and products, cannot take on even the attribute of unthinkableness. In no way can it be characterized prior to the production of the effect. It lies hidden in its cause, and what we term as the production of the effect is but the manifestation of power. The power which belongs to clay is latent in clay, and when assisted by the potter, etc., it attains the status of a modification of clay with pot. People who are lacking in discrimination confuse the pot possessing a spherical shape, etc., with clay which is endowed with the five attributes. They combine both and call the combined form pot. The empirical usage of potness is born of ignorance, because prior to the operations of the potter there is no potness in clay. Potness, which is characteristic of the object with spherical shape, etc., is intelligible only after the operations of the potter are over and not before. Pot like the pot like the power which has produced is indeterminable. It is not different from clay, for it is not found to exist apart from clay. Nor is it non-different from clay, for it does not exist in a clay. Prior to the production of pot, hence it is like the power, indeterminable. The very fact that it is the product of an indeterminable power guarantees to its indeterminability. If both the indeterminable, it may be asked how are they different. The unmanifest state is called power, and when the same power manifests itself, it takes on the name of pot. The magical power of the magician is not manifest when he does not perform his feats. It gets itself manifested in the wonders that he works. Thus, the modifications, because they are of the nature of Maya, are illusory, unreal. What is the locus of modifications is real. This is what the Chandogya Upanishad say. It asserts that when the self is known, everything else becomes known. Just as, my dear, by a single cloud of clay, all that is made of clay becomes known. All modification being only a name based upon words, the truth being that all is clay, and just as, my dear, by a single ingot of gold, all that is made of gold becomes known, all modification being only a name based on words, the truth being that all is gold, and just as, my dear, by a single pair of nail scissors, all that is made of iron becomes known. All modifications being only a name based upon words, and the truth being that all is iron. All modification is only a name based upon words, and there is no such reality as modification. In truth, the only reality is the clay, the unmanifest power, and the manifest product, which appear to be different only on account of the difference in time and are unreal. But the locus of the two, namely clay, is real because it persists in both without being destroyed by them. The manifest product is unreal because it is devoid of truth, because it is apparently real, and because it is originated and destroyed. After it is produced, man gives it a name. Hence, scripture says that the modification is only a name based on words, and even after the modification or product is destroyed, the name persists in the words of man. Since the product is designated by a name, it is said to be of the nature of that name. The product is unreal because it has no essential nature of its own, because it is perishable, and because it is of the nature of a name based on words. These three probands firmly establish the unreality of the product. Unlike pot, which is a product, clay is said to be real because it does not lose its essential nature by the production, or the destruction of pot. It may be asked why, if the modification pot be unreal, it is not removed by the cognition of clay. We reply that it is removed in so far as the notion that it is real is destroyed. In the case of delusion, not due to an adjunct, nirupadhika bharma, when there is the sublation of the delusion of the cognition of the true, not only is the notion that the modification is real is destroyed, but also the modification ceases to appear. When there is the cognition of the rope, not only is the cognition of snake realized to be unreal, but also the snake ceases to appear. In the case of delusion, due to adjunct, Sopadhika Bharma, however, sublation consists only in the knowledge of that what is superimposed is unreal. For so long as there is the proximity of the adjunct, what is superimposed will not cease to appear. Even after one gets the knowledge that crystal is colorless, the crystal appears red so long as there is the proximity of the hibiscus flower. The instance of pot being superimposed on clay is a case of delusion due to adjunct. Hence, its sublation consists in the cognition that pot is unreal. No one regards the reflection that is cast in water by the man standing on the bank of a tank to be true. Though the reflection appears, it is not true. The Advaitins admit that the very knowledge that the world is unreal, consequent on the cognition of the absolute reality of the self, is what constitutes the human goal. The world may continue to appear, but that does not negate the cognition of the self. In the example of pot, when it is realized that clay is real while pot is unreal, the continued appearance of pot does not in any way hinder the cognition of the reality of clay. That pot is only an illusory manifestation of clay is evident from the fact that it does not relinquish the nature of being clay. If it were a real transformation of clay, then its nature would be different from that of clay, as curds differ in nature from milk. Pot does not abandon the nature of being clay, nor does an ornament made of gold cease to be gold. Hence, pot, ornaments, etc. are illusory manifestations of the clay, gold, etc. It cannot be said that pot is not an illusory manifestation of the clay, because when it is broken, it does not turn into clay. For even in the potsherds, clayness is present. When it is shown that even the view of transformation does not explain the cases of pot, etc., it is not difficult to prove that the view of absolute creation is thoroughly inadequate to explain them. In the view of absolute creation, the cause clay itself is different from the effect pot. Then a distinction will have to be made between clay as the cause and clay as the effect. Thus, also it would have to be stated that sound, etc., which belong to clay as clay, are different from sound, etc., which belong to clay as pot. But as a matter of actual experience, we do not see any absolute difference between clay and pot, though empirical usage is the cause of the distinction between clay and pot. It does not show the two to be mutually different. Thus, we find that the theory of absolute creation fares no better than the doctrine of transformation explaining pot, etc. Uddalka cited the cases of clay, gold, and iron as examples because all the three illusorily manifest themselves as their respective modifications. He took them as instances also to prove that when the cause is known, its products become known. It may be doubted how the cognition of real clay, etc., can be concomitant with the cognition of the unreal part, etc. In the effect, there are two aspects, the real and the unreal. The clayness of the effect is real, whereas the partness thereof is unreal. When it is said that by the knowledge of the cause the effect becomes known, what is meant is that the cognition of the cause which clay accomplishes also the cognition of the real aspect of the effect with the clayness of part. The unreal aspect of the effect need not be cognized, for it is of no use. It is only the knowledge of the true that is the human goal and not the knowledge of the untrue. Now, to say that by the knowledge of the cause there is the knowledge of the effect is then tantamount to saying that by the knowledge of clay there is the knowledge of clayness. But what novelty is there in this assertion? When the contrary it appears to be a tautology. If thus it be said, we reply true. There is nothing novel in saying that by the knowledge of clay there is the knowledge of clayness. Those who know that in products what is real is the cause do not wonder when they are told that when the cause is cognized, the real aspect of the effect also becomes cognized. But those who believe in the theories of absolute creation and transformation, as also the men of the world, are struck with wonder when they hear that the knowledge of the cause leads to the knowledge of the effects. How the knowledge of the one causes the knowledge of the many is an enigma to them. The purport of the scriptural passage in question, however, is not the knowledge of the many. What is of prime importance to the Shruti is the knowledge of the one. When Uddalaka questions his son Shvetketu, did you thou ask for that instruction by which the unheard becomes heard, the unperceived becomes perceived, and the unknown becomes known? What he means is that the knowledge of the self is the supreme human goal. When Brahma, the material cause, is realized, the entire world, its unreal manifestation, becomes known. So I conclude this video here. Next video will start with part 3 of chapter 12, Illusoriness of the World. Namaskar, my dear friends. Thank you for watching this video.